Welcome, Foul Tarnished. You are listening to episode 6 of the Elden Ring Discussion. This is Cozmoses, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sir Gideon the Half-Known. How you doing, Gideon?
I'm doing great today, Cosmoses. Just enjoying my day off. Our topic today is catching up with the current events in the Soulsborne sphere. Starting us off, the first Elden Ring Game of the Year edition was handed out at the Japan Game Awards of 2022 this week. Fromsoftware won big at the Tokyo Game Show, picking up 2 prestigious awards. What do you have to say about that?
I don't know. It's exciting, and I think it's well deserved, and I'm sure that they're going to be getting a lot more awards as the year closes out. What do you think about it?
I'm super stoked. I think it's it's very much deserved for a game developer that's put so much hard work into their work over the years and perfected everything that they've done. I'm glad that they're getting the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, it's definitely been a long time coming. Today we have a guest joining us for that very purpose to discuss things like this. It's going to be Ziostorm. He is visiting the Roundtable Hold to get us up to speed on recent events. How you doing, Ziostorm?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited for the coming months, all the news that's going to be breaking and everything. So I'm just kind of getting myself mentally prepared for the future. I think we got a lot coming up with Elden Ring.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I know recently you put out a video, I think within the last couple days, about the Elden Ring PvP being dead. And now you're talking about being excited. What's going on?
Well, okay, so in terms of the multiplayer at least, and I ended up taking that video down actually. I think I got people were kind of bullying me into it. And this is a topic I think we're going to get into later, just like how the general sentiment around PvP. But I recognize that when it comes to the multiplayer being dead, a lot of the things we were expecting, when I say we, be seen, the arenas was a big thing, and like we had patch 1.06 come out, and that kind of put a band-aid on everything, made it fun again for a while, but now it's kind of just like, I don't know. It took me around 30 minutes to get an invasion at 125 yesterday, and when I was recording for that video, and so that was kind of the topic I was talking about. But when it comes to like news and the future of Elden Ring going forward, I think we have a lot to look forward to in the PvE scene, and I hope that also includes the multiplayer.
Yeah, I've completely given up on PvP invasions myself, and even have stopped doing casual duels at Raya Lucaria with how scarce the scene has felt lately.
Mhm.
I think that, you're onto something with that PvE discussion, though. Last episode, we were talking about how From Software has a habit of doing, 3 quarters after they release their game, they sometimes get into releasing the DLC.
Right.
So we might be looking into at least hoping for a new announcement for PvE DLC before the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's been a bit tough for me to talk about because the things I've been put onto, the rumors I've heard, I can't go into specifics, but from what I've been kind of the rumors I'm hearing and from the people that definitely know a lot more than me, it we have a lot to be excited for.
I believe that.
Yeah. I'm just hoping it's not too long before we get that announcement.
Yeah, I was hoping sometime in October would be ideal, and if they do announce some really cool DLC, I think that might revive the PvP scene a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Although
definitely.
they still have like a lot to work on. I think one of the major issues with the PvP, in my opinion, is how short they can be. Like,
Yep.
you're so strong to fight these incredibly difficult bosses, and it's balanced that way, but then like it's not balanced in the PvP where your health doesn't really reflect like the amount of damage that can be done.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly, and that's a big part of it too. You spend, especially now, you spend like 10 to 15 minutes getting an invasion or a duel in the first place, and then it's over in 10 seconds, you know? And so, with the majority of the time spent not engaging in the action, I think that is one of the biggest core flaws of Elden Ring multiplayer. And
Yeah.
then even
Definitely.
for invasions, you've got every fight being a 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, and so you're having to try your hardest in that 10 seconds. And so it's just kind of all around not very satisfying, especially.
You're cutting out a little.
Cutting out a lot.
Hang on, that might be my mic threshold.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. You like go too low and then it's just gone.
Yeah, okay. Is this better?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying, like, it's a little bit dissatisfying, especially when you don't have anything to work towards, you know? In the past games, we had covenants. You get the covenant items that were much easier to obtain if you engage with the multiplayer. And then if you wanted to do...
Damn, there you go again.
Yeah, you're cutting out
You're
again.
in a
I
really
think it's
good-
like an internet thing.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bottom of my screen right now, and it's my internet going out.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's something...
Edit it.
That's one of my biggest complaints. I live out in the kind of in the country, and so my internet's very bad, especially on the upload side. And so it kind of a recipe for disaster. I hope it's not been too bad.
Yeah,
That's
for the
okay.
most part, we can splice it together, and what you've said has made sense in between. Where do you live, anyways?
I live in Arkansas, but kind of outside the city. And so yeah. The my options for internet out here are very limited. And I pay like way over average for way below average speeds.
Yeah, I grew up living out in like the middle of the woods, and I feel that pain of just never having good
Yeah.
internet. I don't think I could do it as an adult. I live in the suburbia, so
It's looking a little bit stable for me now. Hopefully that fixed itself.
Cool. So you were saying something about the covenants and the working towards something in the PvP, and I think something around how Elden Ring lacks that.
I think that's probably Elden Ring multiplayer's biggest flaw, is that there's just nothing to work towards. And I know it's not a live service game, but if we just put it in like comparison to the past games, there was always a reason to engage with multiplayer back then, and now it just kind of feels like a tacked on afterthought.
yeah, I think in their effort to remove to streamline the multiplayer aspect of it and make sure that PvE players could achieve all of their player goals and that PvP players wouldn't be incentivized to just punish certain things. They removed the covenants. But like you say, it adds to the demoralizing effect of just being an invader, because on top of you not getting any worthwhile items like the covenant rewards, you're consistently getting matched in the fights that are too short, are extremely punishing against you, and just aren't all that fun to fight in the end. Because even if you win, it's not satisfying, because it forces a try-hard mentality to avoid all of the stuff that can come at you. You've got to just, I don't know, you've got to compensate for every single possibility, and it makes the game tiring to play as an invader.
Exactly.
I think one thing when it comes to the online is it seems like maybe they had more of a focus on co-op instead of the PvP, which we did lose the PvP aspect in a sense, but I think that the co-op was much better than any of their other games, where it was a lot easier. You could play the entire game with a friend, and it was the item to be able to play co-op was so bountiful. And so I think I actually did an entire playthrough with a buddy, which it wasn't you could do it in previous games, but in this one it was much easier.
Yeah, and I think something that Elden Ring did very well when it comes to the co-op scene was getting the player used to it. There was a lot of NPCs to summon for boss fights, but it didn't do that for invasions. There weren't a lot of AI invasions to get you used to the kind of the flow of how that happens. And so a lot of the players now, when they get invaded, they feel like it's griefing.
You're cutting out, but you can just keep going at the griefing point.
Yeah, it's very jarring for new players when they get invaded and they haven't been invaded by those AI before.
I think that I really hope that if they were to update the game, that they would fix that, because it's like you say, there's not enough just NPC invaders. And even when they do invade, the fact that they only get one Estus use makes them sort of an inevitable defeat, unless it's someone like Okina who has the Rivers of Blood that can catch a player off guard with a 2 or 3 shot. Most people don't die to the Phantoms unless they're comboed. But I think it could be really cool if they if they powered up the phantoms a little, and the AI for like players in Elden Ring is really good. And they've even like got different like personality formats that like, all the way back in Dark Souls 2 with Jester Thomas and some of that stuff they were working on, not just kill you NPCs that invaded, but sort of unique AI for them. And I think that if they, I don't know, I feel like they didn't capitalize on it. Like you say, there's just
Mhm.
not enough PvE invasions.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. Like it really makes the player surprised when they run into an actual invader as a player. And they're 100 times better than any of the AI. Able to kill you much faster, do a lot more damage, and actually dodge the attacks. Because the one thing I noticed in Elden Ring is the AI invaders can always be staggered, and then they'll just keep walking straight forward, even after they've been staggered. So you can get them caught in combos and kill them very easily. And the biggest thing when it came to like why people hated invasions back in the day was twinking. And in Elden Ring, that also allows it to be much more of a problem because you can run all the way to the end of the game and get those overpowered weapons. Or something I've also talked about on the channel, those websites that sell the items to new players for real money. That's also made it much worse. So you'll get invaded by somebody with rivers of blood right when you step into Limgrave if you try to play with a friend. And so I think the design for it overall was just very overlooked. And as much as I like to speak about improving it, I'm not sure exactly what all they could do. I think it was kind of exactly as we predicted when they first announced that how they were going to be handling multiplayer way back in the day, and it was just kind of a recipe for disaster.
Was that a thing in the past? Because I don't recall it like being able to buy weapons with real money in any of their other games. I didn't think that was a thing.
Not that I can remember, or at least it wasn't as prevalent.
Yeah,
Right.
I think Elden Ring is like a zeitgeist with 10 million sales, sort of got elevated to a unique position where people would sell it. It's like a MMO. People selling game content for cash.
Crazy. Just like a little bit about you. Where'd you come up with the name Ziostorm?
Dude, honestly, it's been my gamer tag on Xbox since I was like 12, and I just never changed it. That
Interesting.
I honestly, I was just looking for random letters and came up with it. There's no story behind it or anything. I've just never changed it since.
Oh, that's actually really cool that you just kind of created something super unique.
Yeah, I was thinking about changing it, and one of my friends was like, "Dude, honestly, that's kind of a good brand name if you ever like want to start a YouTube channel or something." So I was like, "All right, cool. I'll just name it that."
Yeah, it's really cool. And then yeah, that's actually really interesting.
What was your favorite? Like, what are some of your favorite games to play or stream? Well, you don't stream, but make content for.
Um, honestly, the game I play the most, and I really don't play a lot of video games. The I am a Destiny 2 addict. I will say that, and I've been playing Call of Duty this weekend, obviously, and those are kind of the two games I hop back and forth between. Yeah, I kind of hop between Destiny 2 and Call of Duty, and just whatever my friends are playing.
Both
But
really
when
good
it comes to
games.
like casual gaming by myself, I really don't play a whole lot.
Okay, so I take it you sort of started the channel with Elden Ring, or were you into Fromsoftware content before that?
Um, well, I've been playing the Dark Souls games ever since Dark Souls 2 came out, and
Same
they're
here.
by far my favorite for like the just it impacted me so much when I beat Dark Souls for the first time. And when I was making my channel, I was trying to think about a kind of game that I could talk about forever and never get tired of, and that was a series that I decided on.
Yeah, I think that's what drew me to doing the podcast, Elden Ring discussion, rather than doing any other kind of general discussion podcast subject. There's just something
Hmm.
about the FromSoft games. They're so filled with like in-depth themes and like examinations of things. And then they're also just really good games in general. I don't think there's many
Yeah.
dungeon crawlers that can match the level of engagement that Souls games get out of me.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, it just feels like you always have some kind of new idea to approach them with.
Yeah, they're very variable in what you can do. Like there's all of the different weapon builds you can go for, and you can mix and match those with magic. And then every time that I think that there's a Miyazaki quote somewhere where he likes the idea that games have emergent storytelling from how you play the game. So like your journey through a level is your story in that level. And I think you see that with Elden Ring the most. You can choose your path through the different enemies. You can run past them, you can fight them, sneak past them. You can find different loot that's going to define your character. Because it's not like most people do full playthroughs of every catacombs and dungeon. So yeah.
Yeah, I will say I barely touched the dungeons when I played. Even on my second playthrough, man. I after I got to Altus Plateau, I was like, all right, I'm done with the dungeons. Like I really enjoy them.
What was that about Chalice Dungeons and Bloodborne?
Yeah, I said it's kind of ironic because I really like the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne, but I was not a fan of the dungeons in Elden Ring. Can't exactly pinpoint why that was.
Yeah, I really liked them. A lot of them were very unique, and they like built upon each other. Where like I would recognize, it's like you have to figure something out in one dungeon, and you go to another dungeon, and it builds upon that. But you have that skill from the last one to like try and navigate it. I think in my first playthrough, I did every dungeon but 2 of them. I was like on a dungeon hunt. I was like, I'm doing every one.
I think that they both fall into that sort of side content that's meh for me. It's like Darkroot Garden and Dark Souls 1. I don't do it every playthrough. But the Chalice dungeons, I sort of agree with Cozmoses. I feel like the Chalice dungeons are lesser in my eyes. I didn't actually play them until I think last year, despite having done like a couple playthroughs of Bloodborne before. It was I don't like the variable, like the randomized levels feel very vapid to me a lot of the time, even if running through can be sort of fun. But I will say that I really like the bosses. Like the story of exploring the Thumerian catacombs to find like ancient Yarnum and all of that stuff. Like finding the bloodletting beast, and I don't know if it's the bloodletting beast, and realizing that it's Lawrence or whatever is sort of cool.
They get increasingly difficult. Like I think I'm like, because you can get to that. There's like an achievement for the Thumerian Queen, and I think it's like the headless. Is it the headless bloodletting beast? I can't remember. Their health bars are just insane and like so difficult to me. I wasn't able to complete it.
Yeah, the second blood-starved beast fight took me like 25 minutes of fighting it to kill it. And I was probably way too underleveled, but it I already had the moveset memorized, so I was like, well, I can just go ahead and deal with it. But it took so long to kill it.
Yep. Yeah, the health bars are absolutely insane. How did you get into the content creating stuff? Kind of when did you start?
I've always wanted to do YouTube ever since I was like 12 years old and the website first came out. I would see like the very first people to upload gameplay on YouTube, and I was like, man, I want to do that. And so I bought a capture card a long time ago, but I never got around to actually making content until kind of COVID hit and the lockdowns and everything. And I was like, I got to do something to occupy this time of just being stuck at home. And so that's when I decided to start making videos.
Oh, nice. That's really cool. You got pretty big pretty fast then.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years. It's definitely grown a lot more than I ever thought it would. My goal for 2021 was to just get 1,000 subscribers, and I think I finished the year with 10 or 15, something like that.
Nice.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah, I was definitely not expecting Elden Ring to blow up as much as it did. That was probably the biggest thing that kind of catapulted my channel to what it is now. Elden Ring as a whole was just such a success way beyond my expectations.
Same here.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other releases this year that were like as major as Elden Ring.
I don't think we'll see any. Like even Silksong, like Hollow Knight's a way too small of a community to get big. And I mean, I guess God of War Ragnarok is gonna come out, but I'm not sure if they'll draw the same like widespread appeal. They'll just get like a core gamer audience.
I think it might have like a fairly widespread appeal just because I think people are kind of waiting for like the next thing to play. Like at least with me, like I'm kind of like bouncing back and forth between like older games and I check out some new releases, but for the most part, I feel like probably a lot of people are like waiting either for the Elden Ring DLC or a game like that to come out. like a major AAA game to play.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that does at the Game Awards, if it's able to beat Elden Ring or not.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the quality of the game, but if it's anything like the first one, I'd say that it has a chance.
And it'll
Mhm.
be fresher in everyone's heads, so it'll be
Yeah,
a
the
big
recency
contest by
bias is
that.
going to be there for sure.
It already got the Japan awards though, so
Yeah.
it's not like they matter much.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm hoping the DLC announcement comes before the Game Awards, but I think if there's anything to go off of, that's probably when they're going to show it, is the Game Awards.
Yeah, I think they'll either try and push it out before, like a month before, so it can get ingrained in people's heads as part of the game, and then the Game Awards will hit. Otherwise, they'll just shelf it for afterwards and then like announce it.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see when they're going to decide to announce Armored Core. It's like 99% that that's going to be their next game, but I'm just not sure when they're going to decide to announce that. I was really thinking it was going to be this month, and we still have another week to go. But if there, and I am kind of surprised because there haven't been any leaks. There's been no like real rumors going on about it. And compared to like last year with Elden Ring, it's just been so quiet.
Yeah, definitely really quiet.
I think they're trying to keep a tight lid on it after, they got all the hype from Elden Ring and now they want to keep everything secret so that they can give a cool surprise.
I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they've been hiring so many people as well.
Oh, I have not seen that.
The
No.
team, yeah, if you follow their PR on Twitter, they have like every week it's just been hiring new people, new meetings going on here, like sign up to join the team. And so I think the future for Fromsoftware as a whole too is going to be very different.
I think they're going to try and expand the team, get multiple game projects going since they have a lot of people in their current game team to at the point of Dark Souls 2's creation, they were working on they were starting Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne and Sekiro, and afterwards they got the Sekiro. So it generally looks like they've got like a sort of two games at once system, but
Mhm.
with how big Elden Ring is, I imagine that the publishing companies and everyone will be wanting to expand that. So I think it makes a lot of sense that
Oh
they
yeah,
have a
for sure.
hiring frenzy.
Yeah. There was also that quote that Miyazaki said in the where he said, "Going forward, you're going to see a different color of From Software," and I think that has me really excited.
I'm super hyped. And like Armored Core, I never played the original because I don't know, I never had like a PlayStation for it. So I think the closest I ever got was Temptation to emulate. But to see a game made new and with all of their new expertise and the gameplay designs like today, that'd be great.
It'd also be really
Yeah.
cool because it would be really different than a lot of their like last releases. Like it would just be a totally different type of game, which I think would be fun to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I need to get caught up on Armored Core. I've never played them either, and I really love that genre of game too. So I need to start investing because I don't want to go into it not knowing like exactly what the game is, because I do kind of plan on making content if that game does come out, and just to have like the knowledge. I
Yeah, I bet that'd
need
be
to
valuable.
doing that.
So, you mentioned that you haven't played Armored Core, but you have played a lot of the Souls games. Have you played all of them? And which one's your favorite?
Dark Souls 1 holds a special place in my heart. That was the first one I played, and it was the one that definitely impacted me the most. I don't I don't like to admit it, but I am not a Dark Souls 3 fan. Like at all. I do not enjoy the story of that game. I don't have a lot of fun going back and playing through it. But I love the PvP in Dark Souls 3, and so that kind of puts it up my ranking. But Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, I would put after Dark Souls 1, and then maybe oh no, actually, Sekiro is probably my number one.
Sekiro is great.
I loved
My
that game.
favorite.
So my ranking for the top 7, I think there is, would be Sekiro, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3.
Honestly, that's pretty close to mine. I just think that Bloodborne and Elden Ring go above Dark Souls 2 for me, but
Same
Mhm.
here.
I'm right there with you. Dark Souls 1 is just so special. It's hard to like that entire first segment of the game up until you beat Ornstein and Snow and Anor Londo feels like such a good adventure, you know? And it's hard to
Yeah.
beat that feeling. One of the AMA commenters, Relevant Heart, has asked, what is your favorite game of all time?
Metroid Prime 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure if that's kind of like the theme of my channel. I use all Metroid music. My logo is the Metroid Prime symbol. It
Metroid has great music.
oh yeah, it's the best. Definitely my favorite like video game music ever. But yeah, Metroid Prime 2 is easily my favorite game of all time.
Nice.
Have y'all ever played it?
I have, yeah.
I haven't played it. Cosmoses, I mean, what's it like? Like, I don't know much about the Metroid series, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't fully remember just because I played it like a wicked long time ago, like when I was just a kid. But yeah, I'm trying to remember, trying to figure out which one I played. The most experience that I have with him, like off the top of my head, is definitely in Super Smash Bros. Like that's where I used him the most. Metroid was definitely a good game, but it wasn't one that like stuck out a ton for me. From like I played a lot of games as a kid, and I don't fully remember it. I'm like kind of looking it up right now.
Yeah, the Metroid Prime games, they're um first person adventure games, kind of technically first person shooter, but with the style of the game they went for, it uses a lot of the same like movements and combat as old mech games. So like the old I don't think it's Gundam games that you'd see in like the arcades a long time ago. And that's also why I want to play Armored Core is because it looks very similar to the movement and style of the Metroid Prime games. But it's actually where Dark Souls and Demon Souls and all of it get their kind of level design. Or not Demon Souls, sorry. Like the Dark Souls world is built very similar to a Metroid style world.
Like a
Um
Metroidvania.
yeah, and I mean like that it's got it in the name. The Metroid games kind of started that whole like level boss upgrade your character to move through. So you would find new upgrades to move throughout the world, and then you would use those upgrades to backtrack and explore areas that were kind of secret back at the beginning. It also started the environmental storytelling kind of to where the lore would be hidden in descriptions of things that you could pick up throughout the world. Just kind of a lot of the key principles.
Yeah, I've seen that analogy used before. It's sort of interesting because I've actually seen like some debate about it. You know, is it fair to count the Souls series as a Metroidvania, or is it its own genre? Like, is a Souls like the genre defining enough with its roll dodges, its stamina-based combat, its ease, like the ease in which you die?
Hmm.
The fact that it's a third person and the fact that it has so many derivatives, or does it get lumped into the Metroidvania? Because I mean, like either way, it definitely has inspiration from like those older style JRPGs and Metroid games where you've got to explore a world. Like Final Fantasy. Um, like it's very honestly like the like Demon Souls just straight up has mind flayers the same way that Final Fantasy does. So like there's a lot of roots from various Japanese games.
Yeah, I think the level design definitely takes inspiration or builds upon the Metroidvania ideas.
Definitely.
And the combat though, I think that was kind of and it was kind of a revolution in the gaming industry with the soul style combat. And so I think that by itself is plenty to say that the Souls games are their own genre.
Yeah, and definitely with like a lot of games modeled after them, I think they're deserving more of their own genre, just because there's now like a whole group of not like copycats, but games inspired by that use those combat systems. Um, Not to get into too much drama, but we did have another user on the Reddit page asking, Agaric was asking what you think of the Souls community drama going on, and the fact that you mentioned Register Organi on one of your shows recently.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this is honestly a video I debated on making, but I feel like people are getting tired of me talking about drama, but I think the Reddit as a whole needs to go. Like, I really do. If especially from a creator's point of view, because every single Souls creator has dealt with them in a negative way before. I think even Magister was telling me Vadi even said that to him. Just like how they're so against content creators having any involvement on there whatsoever. And I don't know where that comes from. Back when we were trying to get the Elden Ring PvP.net made, they would not let us talk about it at all. They blocked all of our posts on there. We asked them to get the survey pinned. I don't know if you guys saw that we did a while back. And they pinned it for like an hour and then took it down and claimed that they didn't believe we were actually doing any good. They said they didn't trust our involvement with Bandai Namco. And yeah, just a lot of things like that to where it was completely uncalled for. Just the way they treated us.
We actually, Gideon and I have experienced the same thing. And I've also heard the same from like a lot of people. And to me, like, I won't say too much on it, but from what I can tell, it just seems like a control issue that they just like want to be in control of everyone. I know that they've asked certain Discord servers or certain Reddit pages to basically either like shut down or like merge into theirs. And so their whole idea is like everything they must have control over. I don't know the people over there that are doing it, but that's the kind of vibe that I got.
Yeah, and like any deep lore speculation that you see on there gets taken down immediately too. Any kind of talk, especially with the Magister stuff, like he actually contacted the team that wrote the music for the game and they took his post down. And then they were propagating the post of the fake lyric translations and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was
And
very weird.
yeah, and the mods too, they like pin posts at the top that go against their own guidelines. It's
Yeah,
crazy. But it's just kind of unfortunate that that's the place that From Software checks. That's the place where all of the Elden Ring, it has the biggest collection of Elden Ring fans in one place. And they just kind of shut down anything that isn't like surface level.
yeah, it's unfortunate that we see that kind of management over there on the subreddit. We're proud to have, we're happy supporters of Elden Ring Discussion, the subreddit and its affiliates. So,
Hmm.
we try and do what we can. Moving on to less dramatic news. Let's get into Elden Ring itself. Like last episode, and I think a little bit now, we've speculated the possibility of a fall announcement for new DLC, and we've also speculated about Armored Core 2. But I feel like things we haven't brought up yet are, what that DLC might be like, as well as if we might see other games, from software. You think about Armored Core, but you've also speculated about Bloodborne 2, I think, on your channel, and my crackpot theory is that we might get a Sekiro 2 at some point.
Man, I hope. I would love a Sekiro too, but I don't know. I just don't think it's going to happen, especially with Activision. I think that tie with From Software isn't there anymore, but I really don't have a lot to base that off of. But when it
That's
comes to
what I thought.
Bloodborne 2, like there's so much evidence and reason for them to do it that it doesn't make sense that we haven't seen it yet. Especially on Sony's end, even if it is going to come from Bluepoint instead of From Software.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of gave up on Bloodborne too. Like honestly, the subreddit I think devolved into Bloodborne cart memes a long time ago. So I think people were hoping
Yeah, I
anymore.
haven't given up on it. I think the PC port is definitely going to happen at some point. I don't know if you
That'd be
guys saw
stunning.
Lance McDonald say that kind of all the rumors that the code was not going to allow for a remaster or anything like that were completely false. And especially just with Sony's pattern of porting their games over to PC now, I think it's not really a question of if, just when.
Yeah, it's inevitable. Like it's not gonna be possible 15 years from now to keep the PS4 collection and all the exclusives going. I imagine. I can't speak for what the technological climate might be like, but
I would be just as happy with a Bloodborne remaster as well. Actually, I guess I would definitely be happier with Bloodborne too, but I'm definitely in the chunk of people that have kind of given up on the idea, and I'm with you. I'm a strong believer that I don't think we would get a Sekiro 2, just because I feel like that story was completely told.
Well,
Uh,
the ending where you purify the divine child is like the going to the west ending, and it's got like a cliffhanger where you've got to go purify the divine dragon in Kuro or whatever in the divine lands, and it's definitely not like expecting a second game, but there's a possibility that makes me want to hope. And the fact that Zuli made a video, like, or maybe two videos that were sponsored by Activision, I don't know. It just puts the spark there.
Yeah, I don't think that was really a hint for a sequel, more so than just tapping into the Elden Ring hype and kind of hopping on that marketing train. But
Yeah, direct people towards Sekiro.
yeah, I like to hope though that a Sekiro 2 would happen because it's by far my favorite game out of the that they've ever made. And I would like to see them kind of take that route of a new style of combat again and something that just completely outside the box like Sekiro was. Because every time they do that, they knock it out of the park completely.
I'm wondering if we'll see something like that with Armored Core, just a different style.
Yeah, and if that leak a while back where they kind of put out that survey, I don't know if you guys know much about that, where they had they sent that leak that happened a while back where they sent those pictures and descriptions of the next game to that guy kind of to gauge community interest in a new Armored Core. You all know much about that one?
No, I
No,
don't
can you
actually.
break it down for us?
Yeah, so last year there was this leak apparently. Um Somebody put a post up on Reddit that they had received an email about a community feedback survey for a new Armored Core game. And in that were a lot of pictures and videos and descriptions of the next Armored Core game. And a line in there said that it was going to be taking a new direction for the Armored Core series. I don't remember the exact wording, but kind of along the lines of it was going to be kind of similar to Souls, like a Souls twist on Armored Core. And
Sounds really cool.
yeah, it sounds great. My only hesitations with that leak were that the plot was very similar to Dune, the book and the movie,
It's my
and
favorite book. So
they even used some of the same terminology like melange and kind of like a war for a new substance called melange, that kind of thing. But everybody else, like a lot of all the other content creators, believed that leak 100%, and I'm not entirely sure why. But the fact that they do makes me think that it was definitely onto something.
I'm all in on it. You know, you believe it, everyone else believes in it. Let's go. I'm an Armored Core Dune. We're gonna fight on the ruined planet of Arrakis after the Spice Wars, where the Carino Empire collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but destruction. Sounds fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, DLC for Elden Ring. I think you know what do you think we'll get out of it, like content wise? You know, PvP, Mikola. What else do you think? Do you have any speculation?
I definitely want to see that Mikola DLC. That's what I want. But if we follow from Software's pattern, it's just going to be something we can't even expect.
I
But
would hope that they would just subvert everything. Maybe like a frenzied flame that leads into Mikola, since he probably has Saint Trina visited the frenzied flame caravan. I think that sort of gets into. I wanted to ask you, what do you know about cut content with the game? I've seen a lot of data mined stuff across like so many different channels that I've forgotten many of them.
yeah, I watch a lot of Sekiro Doobie's stuff. He sends me stuff every now and then. Um, there definitely seems like there was much more to Mikola's story than what we got. There's all the groundwork built in for Covenants. There's those arenas, and that's what I really want to see in DLC. Is I want those arenas and like the ranking systems like we've had in the past. I hope they bring back the Covenants, because that would give so much more reason to engage with the multiplayer. But for story-wise, there's definitely more of Mikola than anything else in the cut content. Yeah, and aside from that, it's just a lot of little things. Like voice lines being changed, cut weapons. At least that's what I've seen.
Cut underwear.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing.
I remember seeing a little while back where people like had somehow got it, like modded it into their game, and then like went into other player games and then dropped the cut content, and then those people's games would, the save would just, they wouldn't be able to use it, which I thought was pretty crazy.
Yeah, they were cracking down on that.
Yeah, and then there was that one
bad.
too where the guy was like casting a spell and like messing with people's games too.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of griefing, sort of, I don't know. The stuff where you can ruin people's games completely is always the worst.
Yeah, I was saying, like, all the comments I get from me calling invasions griefing, like, that is what griefing is. That kind of thing. It's not
Yeah.
invasions.
It's no. You're exactly right. So getting the covenants, I don't actually know so much about the covenant stuff. I would expect that there'd be one for for the Volcano Manor. I'd hope that Morgott would have gotten one with his Knight Riders. Gurink, I think that would have made sense. What do you know about that? Since you're the
I know there is at least the groundwork for one for Moog. There was one
that
for
makes a lot of
Rykard.
sense.
Yeah, because Moog's quest as a whole, it builds up to a covenant. And like when I played it for the first time, I was so confused. I was so confused why I was fighting him in the first place because like I thought I was going to join the covenant. But there was that one. There's one for Rykard and Volcano Manor. We think, yeah, there were the ranks were found for like the Recusants, the Bloody Fingers, the what's it called? I can't remember. I need to find that list again. But they found all the ranks for the covenants, and it was just the player items that we have with ranks. And so I think there was one co-op covenant, and then like 4 invasion style.
Okay.
Mm.
I can see why they would have cut it. I mean, like software design in general is like if you get to the end of the software development period, you cut stuff to re-add it as you go through update processes. So I think Fromsoftware as like a game design company sort of learned that principle. And like even in previous games, I think the way that they present the story is that you get the base game, which has like a sort of dark story. You don't get the full of it, but you do understand the sad ending. Dark Souls 2, it's like you sit on the throne of Ron, everything sucks. Dark Souls 3 is like you don't really know what happens, it's just linking the flame again. But then in both games, it's like Dark Souls 2, you escape the curse with the DLC and you learn about the older kings. It's like an expansion. Dark Souls 3, you get to create a new world through the painting, and then like you get like a sort of final ending and you learn about more about like Gwyn linking the curse. Like I'm right there with you on Dark Souls 3 sucking, but I sort of see why they wanted to make it because it's sort of like a send off to the series after how much people hated 2, and it also makes 2 make sense a lot more. Like it finishes the cycle. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate Dark Souls 3. I think it's just like I don't know. To me, when I played it for the first time, I didn't really feel any attachment to the story. It kind of felt like a lot of fan service more than like an actual building upon the story. But at the same time, I wasn't too deep in the lore as I am now. And yeah, the gameplay like as a whole, I think is definitely the best. Like the player feedback and like the way things feel in the game. But yeah, I was just really confused on the lore when I played it for the first time because like I was just thinking like, why is there a giant tree in Firelink Shrine? Why is all these like repeat people that should be dead from the old games here and that kind of thing? But
yeah,
yeah,
Andre being a smith always bothered me the most.
yeah, that was the biggest one for sure.
Wait, explain this to me.
It's just in DS3. Like Andre of Astoria, the smith at Firelink Shrine, has lived through every single cycle in the entire history of Dark Souls. Just
Oh,
because
man.
he's like the manliest man that has ever lived. Like he's been around since Dark Souls 1. He's like Hugh levels of immortal, just that he's not going senile.
I didn't even notice that.
But yeah, one thing people were telling me too, to go back to like the DLC discussion, is like a lot of times they choose to build DLC off things that can be found in the files of the original game. And if we're just going based on that evidence alone, especially with Elden Ring being such a big game that they'll probably want to build upon things they already have, it all points to a Mikola DLC.
Yeah. Like with the cut content on the Dream Quest, where you could collect Dream Mist, like that sort of speaks to how you'd get into the beginning of the DLC, possibly. And then
Yeah, I mean,
Nicola
and
the
his hand is
character.
just sitting right there, like just
Yeah,
waiting for us to touch or like put the ring on or something.
exactly. The same way that Ronnie is, like, to become monarch, you gotta put the ring on her finger. Sort of the same thing.
Hmm.
Something cool, I just like side tangent with like Nicola's cocoon. Like the only interaction you get is obviously the Mog fight. And when you see Mog show up, he shows up in like a pool of blood the same way that his sanguine nobles get summoned. You know, it's like he's getting summoned by Nicola or the Formless Mother's power. Just, I don't know, neat blood. I love it.
There's also a theory out there too where that might not actually be Mikola in that cocoon. I don't know how much credence there is to that. I haven't actually looked into it, but
I
that might be an
remember
idea too.
Cozmoses mentioned that in our lore episode. What was that? You know more about it.
Yeah, I think just essentially, I think one of the biggest reasons was in the intro cutscene. Moog is carrying like that cocoon and something else, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to remember. I watched that video a little while ago, but I think they were just there was definitely some idea that just that wasn't Mikola in there. I can't remember the reason why exactly, but I know it has to do with that intro cutscene and like her not being in the cocoon or being in the cocoon or something like that. I can't.
Yeah, it's also kind of weird that they use the same model for Morgott, I think.
Yep, that was in the same video. Yeah, he goes through and he in the video. It looks really in depth at Morgott's body after you defeat him in Lanedale, and the body inside of the cocoon is like identical.
Yeah, I haven't
Personally,
I haven't
I think
watched a full video on it, but that was definitely something I found strange because it doesn't make sense for that to be like the way Mikola's body would look, you know?
personally, I think that it's just reusing assets. You know, like it's
Yeah.
not something to look too deep into. Like they needed a long, lanky arm to do that thing for the cutscene. Like if you see, I think Zuli has a really good video that shows how they just sort of rig some cutscenes where Genichiro ship comes out of Ishin in the like finale of Sekiro. And you can tell like it just looks janky as hell when you free cam it. And I think you'd get the same idea. Um
Yeah.
Personally, like if you look at that, I actually watched that video a little bit, Cosmosis, after you told me about it. And if you look at the intro painting, I didn't even notice it until I watched the video, but like you can sort of see golden hair and like a form in Mog's hand. So I think he just like I think he did take Nicola, I guess personally.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely him in the cutscene. And it does line up with the cocoon being like kind of that silk moth style
Yeah.
that we can find
And
that
on
same
top
kind
of it,
of.
it's like if his form changes, wouldn't it make sense for it to change in a rebirthing cocoon where like your
Yeah.
entire body melts down?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would definitely lean more towards that is being Mikola, but there are those theories out there. One thing you mentioned a little while back was the Elden Ring PvP website. Could you tell us kind of what that is?
Yeah, so back before 1.06, we were all just very frustrated with Elden Ring PvP as a whole. Kind of, it was at a point where you couldn't find invasions unless you were just like in one spot because of just the way the world was set up. It's where you'd have to like be at the right side of grace at the right time, at the right level, with the right level weapons. It was just a kind of a downward spiral into a like just nobody being able to find anybody. And so I wanted to get together this group of people to kind of make this big project to send to Fromsoftware. And I ran into the guys, Amir and Gabri. I don't know if y'all have interacted with them before.
Yeah, we planned on having Amir on the podcast.
Yeah, they're great
Yeah.
guys. They run, I think, the biggest Elden Ring PvP Discord. And they had this idea of a website they wanted to do, and so we kind of all got kind of joined hands on a project for that. And I went out and gathered as many content creators as I could to kind of get this research going. We made that survey to get player feedback, and then we reached out to Bandai Namco, and they thought it was a great idea. And so they made the website and went as in depth as possible into what is exactly wrong with the game, how it can be fixed, and then that got sent to Fromsoftware. And that was kind of the end, like, as far as we know. We're not sure if they took our feedback exactly, but based on the way 1.06 turned out, it was kind of exactly what we had been asking for on that website. And so, yeah, that was kind of the gist of it.
I noticed that light rules got extended in 1.06, but I literally don't know anything else about the update. So, would you tell us a bit more about that? Like, what changes happened?
Yeah, the biggest ones were definitely the ability to invade anywhere, from anywhere, and the same for co-op. That was kind of the one thing that was
That's
keeping.
helped a lot.
Yeah. And then obviously like the Rivers of Blood nerf, the Bloodhound Step nerf, that kind of thing. Obviously there's still a lot of issues that should be addressed, like poise, great sword poking, that kind of thing. Just kind of stuff that isn't as prevalent as Bloodhound Step was, but is still kind of just an outlier. And the balancing really isn't like the biggest problem with PvP. I think the fact that we don't have solo host invasions is still just kind of inevitably going to cause the player base to not have as much fun with it. But overall, 1.06 was kind of like the biggest points that we were asking for.
Okay. And I looked at the website eldenring.pvp, and I don't know if that's actually the domain. I think I got it wrong. I was looking at the website, and I quite liked, like, it was very well laid out. Could you tell me a bit about like how it went making the website, and also how it went contacting the Bandai Namco or Fromsoftware employee?
Yeah, so the website was made by his Discord name is Halvard. Extremely talented guy. He made the website all by himself.
Wow.
Amir wrote out a lot of the pages that you see on there. He did the text for it. Amir and Gabri did. And I threw together the survey. They gathered all the data you see on there. And it was built off the input of all the other content creators that we gathered together. And we contacted Bandai Namco through the community manager, who I think they're just very active on the internet in general, and they got the word to I'm not sure exactly how much I'm allowed to say on that, but there were some other people involved as well from Bandai Namco, and they just made sure it got to the right eyes at Fromsoftware. And that's as far as we know on it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now again, and it's just such a well-built website, and the information, like with the pie charts, it's really cool to see, just because it gets all that information in one place. And then on top of, just the surveys and whatnot, the guides, and particularly the build planners, are absolutely insane. Like the Google Sheets build planners look like they would have taken quite a bit of work, and I actually passed along the website to a couple friends of mine, and they thought it was like the coolest thing ever, and they utilized the hell out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean it was extremely well made. Like I was very impressed with how that turned out. I'm not exactly sure what all went into the build planners. I think I remember Gabri saying that may have been his wheelhouse. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean Halvard is just extremely talented. He did amazing work on it.
Yeah, I think it's a really big thing for the community. I'm just kind of surfing around it now. And the survey that you put together is really good too. Just being able to see information about how many hours people have spent, or like, do you feel if it's balanced or unbalanced? Like all this information is just kind of really cool to look at, because you can sort of get a vibe from things like the Reddit or Discord servers of like how people feel about things. but you never really get it all in like one picture where it's just really easy to digest.
Yeah, and I got a lot of criticism because people were like, well, your sample size is only 10,000 and millions of people bought the game. But 10,000 is a very, very good sample size. Like an average survey made by like a corporation or something is probably going to have a sample size of like 10,000 or like 1,000 even most of the time. And so to survey 10,000 people, like I would say it's very accurate. Like
I'd
that's
say it's
probably the
pretty
most
good.
accurate information you'll get.
And every one of those people that takes the time to make a survey is guaranteed to play the game online. So
Yeah.
like it's a pretty strong sample size, even if it's not indicative of the overall player base.
Yeah, and I mean, like, so with it being like a Google survey too, they have to actually take the time to go in there and submit the information rather than just like a simple poll on YouTube or something. And so I think the feedback that will be gauged or was gauged from that survey is not only very accurate, but also shows the people who care the most.
At least the people that speak English and use Reddit and Elden Ring PvP. But no, I agree. That's
Yeah,
like
well,
it's a
not really Reddit because they wouldn't let us post it on there for hardly at
that's
all.
true. So how did you
But
spread it around? I'd like to know about that. I didn't hear about it
that
until
was
I
so I put it on my YouTube, I put it on Twitter, and then a lot of all the other content creators that we gathered as well shared it. And so I would say the majority of the people that took it came from YouTube, and then probably Twitter after that, and then
yeah.
maybe like a couple hundred from Reddit from the time it was up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky that so like was it who was it that told us about it, Gideon? Because I was super excited when I saw it.
I think it was Egeric when he was talking to us about Amir coming on and like telling us about the whole Demon Souls and Elden Ring PvP discords. Which, by the way, those are like two of the biggest Soulsborne communities: the Demon Souls Discord and Elden Ring PvP Discord. So go check those out. Give them some love.
Oh yeah, the way it's set up too is crazy. Like
What do you mean by that?
they've got their own ranks in there. They've got like matchmaking in there and stuff. I have
Yeah,
no idea how it works, but it's awesome.
the tournaments are really cool too.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty huge. Yeah, I think Gideon had also asked, which I'm kind of curious too. I don't know if you got into it, but kind of how contacting Bandai went.
Yeah, so like I said, we kind of went through the community manager, and I can't like give names or anything, but there were some other people involved as well who are overseeing like certain aspects of. I don't know exactly because it wasn't me who did it. Like I know who the like kind of the people that can be contacted are,
Gotcha.
but there was. I'm trying to think of what I can say.
Huh.
There was some very interesting things I learned about that. Is pretty much all I'll say. But yeah, it got to the right eyes through Bandai.
Yeah, I bet it was enlightening.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to have that communication going. I think that's also pretty big for the community to be able, to give feedback to them.
Yeah, and I was a little bit surprised that how eager they were to listen as well.
Yeah, I bet they're really excited to like speak with their player base with how much it exploded.
Yeah, so I think people have a stigma or kind of this appeal in their heads where they think like From Software knows what they're doing without player feedback. They don't want player feedback, and any kind of way to give player feedback is entitlement or not appreciating From Software's work. But they want all they can get. Like they want to know what the players are thinking, and that means a lot to them in a positive way. And so when like we share our concerns about multiplayer or like what we want to see from Elden Ring or their games going forward, that's a positive thing, even if it is kind of like saying something negative about the game. Like that's a constructive criticism that they really value.
Yeah, the biggest thing is like you said, constructing the criticism in a way that's valuable for the developer and knowing that they're human.
Hmm.
Like not having wild assumptions on what they were doing when creating the game, or like on how easy it would be to implement things, but also speaking to the level of how engagement works for you as a player and how different like game mechanics or items can diminish or heighten your experience.
Yeah, and that was the goal of the website too, is to write everything in a way that everybody could understand, the players and the developers alike.
I think
And
you guys are really successful at it.
yeah, I think they did a fantastic job on it. And it's also because we care about the game. Yeah, it's because we care about the game that we are willing to criticize it in a positive way.
And I think Fromsoftware is very careful. Like Elden Ring as a game, I feel like is a very perfected version of the things we got to see in the Dark Souls trilogy, all told in one game with its own it's its own thing completely, but it takes a lot of those themes and it perfects them, and then it puts a new spin and new history on it that makes it all a new
Mhm.
experience, but the same thing again. So I think they've been very careful with trying to make that like a very immersive and perfected experience. And they didn't want the multiplayer or their attempts at like PvP to really get in the way. So I don't know, I feel like they were just like very cautious with it. They just
I would disagree on saying that it would get in the way, because I don't think it would at all. I think that's actually one of my biggest criticisms, at least, is that the multiplayer isn't ingrained enough into the story of the game. But because they're built upon the same foundations, right? Like, if we look at the Dark Souls games in the past, which, yeah, I've said this before, but Elden Ring is more like a Dark Souls game than it is its own thing. And so
yes.
if we view it from that angle, we can really understand what it's trying to be the most. And I think the state of multiplayer kind of being unfinished was more so due to time constraints trying to finish the story part, which is obviously going to be their main priority. But I think in the future updates and the DLC, we'll get to see its completed version.
I agree. I think that they're really holding out for that tournament arena style update to complete some of the more like constructed dueling side of the PvP that people love. And like when I said that they held off on the multiplayer aspects, that's sort of what I meant by it. They wanted to get the game out in its completed immersive state before they
Hmm.
focused on PvP, and that way they could even get people's like reactions to the game's like multiplayer before they really worked on it too much. I think that they've learned a lot. Like from Dark Souls 1 to 2, they learned that like they learned that like changing invasion states, like how it like requiring humanity and whatnot. And then from 2 to 3 they changed it to like requiring Embered, and they made those really good PvP zones. Like,
Hmm.
Aldrich worked very well. Um
Yeah, that is something I wish Elden Ring had so bad.
I do too. And like there's some places that would work so well for it. Like imagine Lane Dole where you could serve Morgat.
Hmm.
It'd just be like a permanent battlefield. It'd be so great.
Yeah.
What's up next for you? Do you have any big plans for anything for the YouTube channel or anything like that?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of winging it right now. I was really thinking we were gonna have some news by now, but I want to remake the mushroom theory video. I've got a few more discoveries videos planned.
What is? I saw that you mentioned that in one of your recent videos. What is your mushroom theory? I think you said something about YouTube removing it or something like that.
Yeah, it got age restricted because of Godric in the video. That was the reasoning. Apparently, Godric's too graphic to show on screen. It makes no sense because it was literally a trailer clip, and the trailer itself isn't age restricted. So,
Oh.
yeah, that's just YouTube being YouTube there.
Yeah, it's very weird. What is the mushroom theory?
Okay, so it goes very in depth. So, how I came up with this was I was originally going to explore the cosmology of Elden Ring and kind of like what the stars are, what the how the greater will got there. And I actually came across a Joe Rogan clip where he was talking about how mushrooms are theorized to originally have come from space by some wild people out there, and it got me thinking like the Erd tree kind of looks like a mushroom, just the way it's shaped and everything. And if we explore like the other theory that it might be a parasite, well, maybe there's some connections there. And so I started thinking about it, and I came across more and more kind of like lore tidbits that connected to that. And so, kind of like the overarching theory that I have is that all of the outer gods are taking a way to decompose the world through the souls of the roots of the tree that was there before the golden Erd tree. because we can find all the bodies and the roots, and that's kind of how the greater will is sustained, is through those bodies. And so with the greater will, here's essentially how the theory goes. We know the Elden Ring came on the asteroid that crashed in the center of the lands between. That's how the greater will got there, and it took control by having the host in America. And the Erd Tree is kind of like, it's technically a mushroom in the way that it's decomposing the bodies through the roots, using the souls as sustenance for the greater will and its power. And it goes way more in depth than that. There's a lot more, like with the death root, for example. Godwin is placed there to intercept the mycelial networks of the tree. The two fingers are quite literally a mushroom called the dead man's fingers. They're fleshy when they're alive, and when they die, they turn into wood. And it makes sense because the mushrooms are technically called envoys of the trees because they communicate through the mycelial networks in the roots. And now that Godwin is there, infecting that network and blocking it to where nobody can die anymore, that's why we see the bodies, or like the ghosts we find throughout the world, they all have mushrooms around their feet. The two fingers,
Wait, you
they're
mean
kinda,
the skeletal militiamen, like those death-righted people that ate the death roots and served the Tibian arenas? They have the mushrooms?
no, like the ghost of the nobles that you can find and talk to. Yeah,
Oh,
they all
so
have
you say that
mushrooms
those
growing out of
people
their
are
feet.
sustained by death. Okay, I
Well,
see.
they're not sustained by death root. They're there because the death root has blocked their souls from going into the Erd Tree. And that's why it's such a
Yeah.
big deal, because the Erd Tree is dying. Because
Well,
it's not
yeah,
getting that sustenance and fertilizer. And
there's this lore tidbit that like the Erd tree literally broke itself off from its roots, most likely because they were infected by Godwin. So, can't get.
yeah. And so more and more evidence keeps piling up. I do a much better job of explaining it in the video. And I'm gonna remake it because there's even more evidence now that I didn't go into in that first one. Just like you can you can quite literally find a fungus equivalent of almost everything in the game. Like Ronnie's design is almost exactly like a fungus called the indigo milk cap. The eternal cities, they look like spores.
How is Rani like her puppet design with the four arms or something else? Like her dead body on the
It's
eternal.
mainly her hat.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
like identical.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So, what do you like? I think I don't know some. So, like, this mushroom theory is new to me. But having played the game and looked into the lore myself, I know that the budding system, essentially, like the entire idea of a bud that comes from death is literally like mushrooms grow from rotten, they grow from rotten logs, corpses, dead things. So the whole cycle of rebirth and death, rot from like the rot goddess and death in general to ancestral spirit that's revered by the ancestral worshippers that like the buds that grow from the ancestral spirit, because from those buds grow new life. Um, from that theory, we know that the Erd tree itself used to be the bud, the same as the Halig tree. The differences between them is that the Halig tree was watered by Mithra's blood to make it into a Halig tree, and the Erd tree as a bud was I didn't figure this out myself. I remember like going online and seeing people that were like, "Oh, look, the golden thing on the Erd tree. It looks like it's not completely connected." And then there's like references to the Great Tree, and all of it like sort of accumulates in this idea that the Erd tree was a bud on the Altus Plateau that was built, like Landel was built around it, and it was probably like a great tree. If you look at the Altus Bloom, it talks about how it's like this ancient flower of the Altus Plateau that was used in an old death rites before the Erd tree. And then you learn that the Erd tree was probably like formed from, whatever power from the Elden Ring or the Crucible of Life or whatever was being grafted onto the bud.
Well,
I don't know. That's just
here's the essence of the theory. So there's a mushroom called chanterelle. It's a golden mushroom, looks almost exactly like the Erd tree. It grows in birch forests. Altus Plateau is a birch forest. Aridin, who I've talked to, one of my friends, he's a fellow consecrator. he has a theory that the mountaintops of the giants are an old tree stump. Well, the mushrooms grow at the base of tree stumps, right? Both the halig tree and the erd tree are at the base of the mountaintops, which is filled with composting dead giant bodies.
You think
The
they're composting?
well, rather than composting, decomposing, I think would be the best word for that.
I thought it was the death root. Or is it the death? Or are you thinking? Are you combining the death root with the decomposing?
The giants. So like decomposing in a traditional sense, like their bodies are in the ground.
I see.
Yeah, and so, but Sekiro Dubi also found that if you free cam up to the top of the erd tree, the golden branches and they are very different. It's not the same tree. So there's two trees growing. There's this traditional tree, and then the golden one that's grown around it. And at the top, you can kind of find these like tendrils of gold that are wrapping around the traditional branches, in like a way a plant would if it's choking something out, trying to steal its nutrients. And yeah, it's just like, obviously in a video format, I can combine it in a way that makes a lot more sense, but there's just so much evidence for it that I did not expect to find when I thought of it originally.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense, and it sounds like you have like a pretty in-depth understanding of like it's just interesting to me that that indigo, what was it, indigo milk?
Indigo milk cap.
Yeah, how do you know this stuff?
Well, after I put out the video, because it's not something I go into in the original one, people were spamming it in the comments. It's like, hey, this looks just like that. I would also recommend looking at Dead Man's Fingers, because it is quite literally the exact design of the two fingers.
Let me look at that one.
Yeah, I think I saw your video of that one, and it really is very similar the way that the fingers grow out of the central body.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of like theories and lore and stuff, I've seen a theory that the Placidusix is linked to the two fingers, and that the reason the strange flesh is like that is because the two fingers are a rebirth aspect of Placidusix, using Empyrean flesh so that he can influence the mortal world as a servant to the greater will. What do you think of like the flesh of the two fingers itself? Like, what do you think of the origin, or if that theory's crack that or not?
The only way I wouldn't agree with that is because they turn into wood after they die. So it makes more sense for them to be plant based, because they do have the blood. Like if we look at Ronnie's, for example, when hers dies, it bleeds, and then it's kind of melting into the ground, and mushrooms are coming out of it. And then the ones that we find dead on top of the divine towers, they are made of wood because they've been dead for a while. And then you have like grass and life growing out of a completely stone structure, not connected to the ground at all. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for that to be there, unless the two fingers themselves are some kind of plant that's been perhaps fed the souls through the root networks and become organic that way. And then obviously when they die, they return to the natural wooden state that they came from. And I think the design portion of them being based on that mushroom, the dead man's fingers, because I tried to look into the lore and like think of a way that the fingers could have gotten their designs, and I just couldn't find any aside from that mushroom.
Well, I mean, like, you know, it's just a hand at the end of the day, but
Yeah, but it's so weird. Like it didn't even really look like a hand, does it?
yeah, because the two fingers come out at a very unnatural angle that, you know, it doesn't look like all of the other fingers of a hand have been removed. It looks like it's a hand with two fingers. And the same thing goes for the three fingers. They're like equally placed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to get into?
I'm down for more questions if y'all got some.
Well, it's all lore based for this ending part.
Well, what's what's your favorite Pokemon card? One question.
Dude, it's hard, man. My favorite Pokemon is Lugia, but my favorite card, that one's kind of tough. My favorite style of card are the ones from Gen 3, way back in the day. They just kind of, I really like the design of the Pokemon back then. And my favorite card would probably be the old Salamence EX. That's probably my favorite one.
Salamence is a dope Pokemon, so
It is, man. I love Gen 3.
it's my favorite one. Emerald is a special place in my heart. What's your favorite demigod?
I like Godric's impact in the story and his role in the game the most. Just because he's the demigod that we kind of get the most personal connection to. Like, he's so hyped up at the beginning of the game. Everybody's talking about him. And so I feel like the payoff when you fight him is the best, in my opinion.
Okay. What do you think of... Okay, so getting into some brief lore speculation and like thematic stuff, there's a lot of like balancing between body and soul that's talked about in Elden Ring, and that's sort of
Mhm.
combined with gold and silver and inner and outer order. And then ultimately, I think all of that ties into an overall paradigm of the game that has to do with laws of regression and causality. So if we look into it that way, then inner order would represent regression, where it's threatened by the frenzied flame and like falling back to the Lord of like going back to chaos and the Lord of Chaos rising. But then outer order is turbulent; it's out of the greater will's control, and it could threaten to destroy the world. So the Golden Order, as like a fundamental idea, is to defend against both concepts. Which is why Golden Order fundamentalism looks like a shield, like its icon. One of the spells makes it very evident, like the one that buffs you shield, actually. But anyway, since Inner Order is represented best through Marika's golden lineage, since she's like, she birthed all of the champions and whatnot, and since the golden lineage goes back to Placidusix, who has scales of gold, Placidusix was like possibly the great old one that Hyetta speaks of. So if we understand him as having everything having broken off of him, and then the Lord of Chaos wants to destroy all that divides and distinguishes and bring it back, you can sort of see that played out again at the end of the Inner Order with Godric, who is obsessed with grafting. He destroys all that divides and distinguishes him with everything else to gain power. I'm not sure if that's reading too deep into it, and if I'm being like, I don't know, like, 10th grade book essay levels on it, but like,
Yeah,
I
well, I
don't know.
mean,
What do you
there's
think of that?
definitely, it follows a lot of the old Hermetic alchemy principles. Almost like that is the biggest theme in the game, is like all the themes of like a crucible turning are tarnished into gold, into pure gold, and obviously unalloyed gold being the most like efficient and the best vessel for godhood. And Godric, if he is taken to represent that, it's not because it's something he sought to do, more so than something he did accidentally, through
I
his
agree.
like heritage
Completely accidental.
and wanting to be like his forefathers and just mimicking them in that way without really understanding the principles behind what he's doing.
And I think that's what makes it well written. Like
Yeah,
the Inner
exactly.
Order
Yeah.
somehow it comes full circle because they regress. In his grasping for strength, he regresses himself.
Mhm.
Like sort of fitting.
Yeah, exactly.
Even his dialogue, like he talks to the dragon that's dead in his graveyard, and he's like, "Thou art a true-born heir," as if like the whole idea is who should be Elden Lord, who should rule the Golden Order, but no one knows, no one can decide, which is why they went to
Mhm.
war.
Well, that's a
So
line I think not a lot of people looked into enough, because it's a very tragic line when he says it. Because
because
you
he
look
doesn't
at
think
like
of
the area
himself
of
as
Limgrave.
true-born.
Yeah. And the dragons are worshipped even though they themselves, like the kind that we find in Limgrave with Agil and
They're
that dragon.
mortal.
Well, they're diluted types of dragons, right? They're not
Yeah,
the same ones that are
They're
that
not
are like
ancient dragons.
Sigisacks. Yeah. And even they're still worshipped in their dilution, but he's not. And so it's like he sees it and he's like, well, why are you worshipped and I'm not? If you're in error, but you're not perfect. And he's in error and he's not perfect, but he's not worshipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he does what Godefroy couldn't, you know, like when you fight Godefroy in his ever jail, it's evident that he was probably the first person to do the whole grafting. And if he was involved with attacking Landel, then it would make sense why he needed the strength.
Mhm.
But we see that Godric goes above him and manages to graft a dragon on, which is sort of cool.
Yeah, and just as the closer he gets to kingship, the more he's hated. So it's like he'll never actually get to the point he wants.
Yeah. And
It's
he even
tragic.
takes the bad rap. I'm not sure where you are on the Glomide Queen theories, but personally I think it's Marika, very solidly Marika. But it's up to interpretation, it's
Mhm.
whatever people want. But if it is Marika, and then Godwyn is, obviously the Prince of Death now, that's why Stormvale's all fucked up, it's destroyed by Deathroot, and Nephili talks about how the winds themselves are
Well, I
tainted.
don't think it's destroyed by Deathroot.
Well, not
I think
destroyed, but
I think the state of the castle is from Radahn's attack.
you think
Um,
Radahn attacked it?
yeah,
I
I mean
guess he would
that's
have attacked it if he went to Landel, but I feel like he would have killed
well,
Godric.
that's
I mean,
that's how
Millennia
Godric
defeated
ended up in
Godric.
Stormvale. He ended up in Stormvale from running away from Radahn. And then like we have the impacts in the side, which are like perfect
Yeah, it
circles.
looks like they were
They're
attacked by
burned, attacked by
catapults.
meteors. No, not
Oh,
catapults, the meteors. Because it's in a melted state too. The stone isn't shattered like it would be from a siege engine. It's Aridin made a fantastic video. It goes into like detail of all of that.
yeah,
But
Stormvale's complicated because it was probably made during the time of the Ancient Dragon Wars, considering Stormvale as a name. Um, so like it's been around for a long time.
mhm.
I think because it makes sense. Like my idea of the timeline is that the Shattering War begins with the Elden Ring shattering, no heir being apparent. So Radahn goes to Landol, but Margit beats the shit out of him. So Radahn retreats. So for him to do that, he'd have to go from Redmane Castle past Stormvale and defeat Stormvale. Of course, I don't think Godric left Landel until like fighting happened in Landel during the Shattering, because he went out as like a refugee, I believe, if I'm remembering right.
Here's how I see it. I think based on the thrones that we have in the Elden Lord arena, I think there was during a time of peace, all the demigods kind of were associated in Landale. And then after the shattering, that's when it kind of broke into chaos. Everybody fled out in different directions,
I
squabbled
agree.
over the territory. Godric found Stormvale Castle, abandoned, empty, claimed it as his own. And then that's when the battle with Radahn took place. And because Kenneth Haidt says that Godric found refuge in Stormvale, fleeing Radahn, that's when it was assaulted by the meteors. And I'm not sure about the dragons. Other people could probably explain that better than I could. But then he couldn't siege Stormvale, so that's when he went over into Caelid and took Redmane Castle there.
I think that he always, everyone has their lands that they were in before, like, the whole shattering happened. So I think that Radahn is general to like the Golden Order's army was just sort of always in Redmane.
Yeah, that would make
Uh,
sense too with Celia.
yeah, I don't know about that Kenneth Haight line. Or Height line. I'm looking it up now, but I totally think it's possible that Radahn sieged it. Millennia definitely like took out Godric but spared his life and didn't take his Great Rune, which I think is interesting. Like I think by the time that she
Yeah,
was
I
at
still
that
have
point,
no idea how he ended up with that.
so essentially, I think that all of essentially, I mean, if I went to, you talked about how there was a peace before the Shattering, and then everyone's went to war. I think that we can figure out a timeline. Like, I'm not sure how much time we have to get into it, but I think that if you look at the intro to the game and you time out all of the different cards, you can just sort of like figure it out from that and a couple different item descriptions. Essentially,
Hmm.
it starts with Marika shattering the Elden Ring, but then Radagon repairs it, and we know that he repaired it mistakenly based off of the hammer description. So that's where you get that time of peace, because now Marika's locked away in the Erde Tree as punishment, and all of the different lords are left without an Elden Lord, because Marika, as Radagon, is he's also locked away. The next card is talking about Godwin's death, but Rajir has a quote that says that Godwin's death happened before the Shattering. And if you look at the dialogue, it's sort of like a miscue with that card because it says, and Godwin the Golden had died, which is sort of like saying Marika and Radagon disappeared, and with Godwin dead, there was no clear heir. Like, Godefroy is Godwin's heir, or like whoever might have been the last of the Golden lineage after the Knight of the Black Knives was imprisoned in an Aver jail. All of the Carrion royal family wasn't exactly well liked because they were like from Raya Lucaria. So now you've got all of these tensions because Millennia and Nicola also just aren't fit for being lords. Millennia because of their rot. The next card goes Rani abandons her great rune. So if we take this to mean the Elden Ring shatters outright, we can sort of understand it as the Elden Ring is repaired, and then it just can't exist on its own anymore, and it breaks apart. Whether that's because of the greater will breaking it, I don't know. Like, I take it to mean that, Radagon mistakenly reforged it. It couldn't stay together. So Rani discards her great rune. The next one is Radahn going to Lendl. It looks like he's in the city streets, and he's getting beaten up by Morgott. Enya has a line that says that someone had two great runes at one time, so since Radahn has a great rune and Morgott has a great rune, we could understand it as Radahn inheriting two, going to Lendl to become Elden Lord, losing the Morgott, leaving.
I think that's in reference to Vike.
I've seen a lot of people say that, but I honestly don't think Vike ever had a great rune, because there's no great rune named Vike's great rune. Like, I don't know. I guess that's a controversial theory.
Yeah, I don't know. The timeline is something I've kind of given up on trying to interpret, honestly.
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
I just don't think we have enough evidence. Obviously, we can theorize all we want, but to say anything concrete, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with what you were saying. I'm just saying, like, from my perspective, I don't think there is a concrete timeline with the information we have in the game.
I think, I mean, like, that's true. Like, literally everything in my timeline is grasping at straws, but, like, the straws are that the intro cutscene is linked up with various paintings. Like, when I talk about Radahn going to the capital to, like, become Elden Lord, that's lined up with the battle monument that talks about how Morgott, It really depends on how much you're willing to go on one quote. Like, personally, I believe that if you link up the quotes enough, that they should sustain each other. But if you're the type of person that only believes like a hard evidence where it has to be said, then Elden Ring is uninterpretable. So
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, look at my mushroom theory, man. That's like built from nothing.
it's out there. No, I mean, I get it though. Like, it's pretty good though. Like, the fact that I mean, the buds are very much mushroom based, life from death, and the fact that the Erd tree is grafted on, like, interpreting that as looking like a mushroom is, I don't know, that makes sense to me. And like, they already like, the tree takes roots and nutrients from the ground around it. Mushroom, all plants do it. It's very together. I definitely want to. You should link me the video when you release it.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I definitely like to check it out. I think it's pretty
We'll give
interesting.
it a shout out on our channel too.
Yeah, when it comes out, we
Heck
can
yeah.
put the link.
I'll link you my old one because it's still like, I think that video was very good, but YouTube just decided to completely kill it.
Probably
So,
a bot that did it, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I even like talked with the team YouTube and everything about it, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not." They like tripled down on their decision. So
You guys, I am hungry, so I'm gonna have to get out of here.
it's all good. I've got to bounce too soon. So
Yeah.
So, definitely thank you for being on. It was like really interesting, and we'd be definitely down to have you on in the future, especially if we get like an Armored Core release or something like that.
yeah, man, I'm always down. I appreciate y'all having me on. Hopefully, my internet holds out better next time.
Hell yeah. We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you later, Zio. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, y'all too. I appreciate it.
Alrighty. So yeah, thank you for listening. This has been the Elden Ring discussion with our guest star Ziostorm. Hope you enjoyed our discussion on current events with Elden Ring, all things Fromsoftware. Anything to add, Cozmoses?
Yeah, I mean, I know we got into some pretty interesting theories, so if you guys want to, share yours as well, we'd be interested to hear them.
Yeah, as always, leave a comment below, let us know what you think, and if you ever want to guest star, or if you want us to do a special topic, or bring something up, or even if you just want a shout out for your own channel, just let us know.
Alright, yeah. Thanks.
See you around. Signing off.